Hello everybody, welcome back to Stellaris, welcome to the quick start guide. Today we are going to be concentrating on tips, tricks and anything else in between in a nice easy fashion. So for those of you who are new players, easy for you to kind of go back to whilst you're playing, or if you want a quick refresh before you start playing. And for those returning to Stellaris, not familiar with the 2.2.7 patch that we are currently on now. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So not the first thing that you should really concentrate on, but we'll do it in chronological-ish order, is the construction or the creation of a race. Remember to kind of give yourself a look on the traits and stuff like that, give a bit of research on them as you're playing the game. Recommend using one of the start races if you can, but if you are going to go ahead and make one, remember, check the traits out, see what you want to do. If you're role-playing, then obviously use the trait that is due to your roleplay. Otherwise, try and get yourself a bit of an advantage. Remember, you need negatives to counterbalance the positives. You need to be equal to 0 once you've done that. So you can't be too high or too low. And remember, obviously, if you want to do any other little bits and bobs, you can do in the creation. Remember, if you do want any other funky little pictures and stuff like that, there is the DLC to give you more pictures and stuff like that. And there's obviously mods as well to help you. So that is creating a race. So just before we start continuing, remember, if you do want to kind of expand on anything that we go over today, there is the complete guide for everything that I'm doing today on the early game side of things, and I will post all of the links to each of the videos in the description below. But let's move on to what you should do first. So you start a new game, the first thing you want to do is remain paused and familiarise yourself with the race you've chosen, which is all in front of you if you haven't actually created the race, so you can have a look at them, see what their ethics, civics and traits are. Keep it paused, don't unpause it, because there's a few things we want to do before we start.
Madam President, I am Veer, a prototype synthetic intelligence. My job is to offer advice and assistance as we seek our destiny among the stars.
So you get an advisor, he always pops up, choose whichever you want to do. I tend to go for tips only. Just to kind of remind myself if I forget something, it'll pop up. But for this, we'll just hit no tutorial.
You'll be sorry.
Okay, so we're still paused. The first thing we want to do is we want to get our survey ship out there scouting. So first thing you want to do, get it out there. Remember, hitting the shift key and right clicking and survey. Right click, survey. It will stack up. So you can stack up a few. Recommend doing the ones nearest to you, such as this. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get a second survey ship built, science ship. Get that queued up. Have a look at your surroundings, see what you need to do. Okay, identify any choke points to start off with. So you got 3 there, and then expand from them through. Okay, so quickly running down, remember you're going to need minerals to start off with to build your stuff, so as soon as you unpause the game, get your construction ship building the minerals and energy. Concentrate on your mining first, not your research. However, you do have your 3 researches that you need to pick. Decide how you're going to play your game now. As in, do you want to build your resources up, or do you want to build your research up straight away? Do you want to push? What word do you want to push? Have a think about it, and then choose which option you're going to go for. You'll flutter between the two, or through various many, but just remember that to start off with, you need to boost something, and I tend to go myself towards the economy, so then I can afford bigger fleets. Things to remember: keep an eye on all of your resources. The first section, which is split off here, all of these resources here are crucial to expanding your empire. You cannot build more space stations without influence. You gain influence on a monthly basis, which is ticking here, and you also need to make sure you don't build too far ahead without building in between. For example, if I wanted to build a space station, say here, the first thing I would do is build out, put a space station here, then here, then here, then here. The reason for that is if you try and build one here, I'm not sure if it'll show us. No, because we haven't explored it. So if you try to build something there, it'll cost you the equivalent of what all these would cost to build there directly, and then you've got to build all these in between as well, so it's costing you a hell of a lot more. Expand slowly through that way. Remember, you have your starbase capacity, which is your upgraded outposts, so they are not the ones you build with your construction ship in your planetary areas. You also have your Empire Sprawl to keep an eye on. Early on, keep an eye on that. Try and keep it down below what your capacity is. If you do have to go over, then make sure you compensate with extra resources. It will penalise you as you go over that, and it can dramatically penalise you the further you go, and can effectively bankrupt you very quickly. If you're using that and having a penalty, you're going to struggle to build quicker. Keep it down to the local area and then expand once you can afford to. Next thing you want to concentrate on is your planetary side of things. Have a look at what you've got. Most of them have the similar kind of setup. Have a look what you want to do next. Have a think about it. So I want to probably expand on my minerals, so I'll build a mining district. Don't build anything at this stage. This is why I've brought it up now. Let it go to overpopulation and then build on it. Remember, if you upgrade these buildings here, or if you add a building here, they take from your worker population, so you can end up dramatically reducing your mineral intake or your energy intake, because it will take from the districts to power these buildings here. Compensate for that and remember it. As you progress through the game, remember to identify your enemies. Remember to have a look at their fleets once you spot them. Place things on space stations that allow you to scout their fleets. Get if they've got open borders, which are identified by the blue markers on the hyperlanes here. The orange ones are ones that you've got to try and get through, that you can't get through because they've got closed borders. So identify them, find out what they've got, and then compensate by building your attack craft, your ships, with countering weaponry. So if they've got shields, you want to be using kinetic weapons, because obviously you want to batter their shields a lot quicker. So the stronger your kinetic weapons are, the quicker you're going to take down those shields. Just a reminder, your ship designer is here. Depending on the fleet you have, depending on the ships you have available, will depend on the setup you have. Remember, destroyers is the first one you get, where it's got 2 sections. They're completely customizable. I recommend trying to do this if you can, but if you're struggling, then keep it to the auto, and it will auto upgrade to what your best thing is. Remember, the effective firepower that your ships have do not determine who the winner is. If you've correctly targeted your enemy and found their weak points and exploited it, then your 2k fleet can easily wipe out a 3, 4, 5k fleet. Numbers don't always count for everything, so you can sometimes get away with doing things a little bit easier. Next thing to remember is your planets and sectors. As you start getting more sectors, you can counteract your workload by setting up your sector settings. You can choose what you want it to do depending on what your gameplay style is, and you can remember to check. So you need to remember, you can set your sectors to what you want them to be depending on your playstyle, and transfer resources so it'll start building for you. It will do much the same as what I've advised doing when it comes to building on your capitals or on your planets. It will wait until it has a requirement and then build on it. So don't expect it to build straight away unless it's already got a demand for it. Remember, war costs. Counteract it by increasing your supply before you go to war. Remember that you get war exhaustion as you progress. If you haven't used something that reduces it, along with like traditions and stuff like that, then you can easily lose the war. Push your combat into the enemy territory, but make sure you win. The more you lose, the more war exhaustion you get, and the less likely you are to win it. If you get 100% war exhaustion, you'll be forced to set a peace treaty. If they manage to do it a lot quicker, then they can force you to lose planets. Remember again to choose choke points that are easily defendable in most locations. If you can't, then you need to bump up your 2 areas that you have to defend. However, where best possible, always try and stick it so you've got it where it only goes through to the 1 area, such as this one here. Much easier defended. Remember, when the enemy does enter the sector, they do not have to engage your space station. They can avoid the space station by flying along the top end here and going into the next sector there. Bear that in mind and try and place a fleet so that they have no choice but to engage the fleet, which brings them into the range of the space station. Don't place your fleet too far out, because if it doesn't, you could end up taking a lot more casualties than you would do if the space station didn't get engaged. Space stations take a hell of a lot more pounding and are a lot easier to replace. More often than not, you won't lose anything on a space station if you've got a fleet and a space station attacking an enemy fleet. You can set multiple fleets. You can choose how you want to split them. You can do pretty much anything. You can disband the ships, which will reduce your cost. A lot of things you can do, and you need to take the time to have a look at it. You can completely split in half of it in. You can transfer specific ships, and you can upgrade your fleet as well. Try and keep your fleet upgraded as best you can. It will always take the better of the kind of designs you've got. You'll need to keep an eye on that. Remember, you can auto upgrade by using the ship designer, and then use that to upgrade as you build your fleets and kind of move along with things. Remember, diplomacy is one way of winning the war, the overall galactic war. The other way is waging war and taking planets by force. The way you do that is by making claims. Hit the claims button here. You use influence to put your claim on. You then make the claim, and then when you go to war with that faction, you can then win them claims over by increasing their exhaustion to 100%, much faster than you do your own. That will expand on your areas, but bear in mind it will also increase your empire sprawl, and it will also increase your starbase capacity if you do happen to capture starbases. That will reflect on your minerals. Whilst at war, remember, you are reduced in minerals anyway. Once you come out of war, you will settle back down, and then you need to plan accordingly with the additional strain on your resources when you've made your claims and won them. Talking of your resources, a quick recap on the resources you have and that you need to concentrate on. Your basic energy credits, your minerals, your food, your consumer goods and your alloys are all things that are operating your planets and stuff like that, and keeping everything rolling. Your influence is how you expand and build things, which you can also use to build to buy edicts, which will increase things to help you along the way. They make some massive changes to your empire, so use them wisely and as best as you can. Remember, you do still need influence to build space stations, so don't go blowing it all on these. Unity, which is what your traditions are, and we will cover them in a greater depth on another episode, because there are so many things you can do, and we'll go into more detail on how they affect things. Your research, you need to increase your research. So once you've got yourself up at the start with doing construction, on the mining side of things, you need to start then producing a strong research side of things. Research will allow you to get better weapons to face your enemies, which means you can conquer a lot better. You can conquer by diplomacy, but I prefer war. Your exotics, remember the exotics increase things like your weapons power, your shield power. They also will unlock your different researches and better ships as well. Some of the ships do use the exotics, and some of the weapons use exotics as well. If you need a description on which exotic does what, check out the Economics 101 and it will explain to you which one uses what, and it'll give you a good idea on what you want to aim for. Last but not least is your naval capacity. Remember, keep your naval capacity below that of your limit, otherwise it will cost you an absolute fortune again. Just the same as it does with Starbase, your upkeep will be insane and you will cripple your economy. War costs, war is expensive. The last thing you want to do is increase that by going over a capacity. If you've got no choice, then go over it slightly, but try and get yourself back under it. Purposefully building fleets to lose is one way of doing it. Make sure you have a good number of different types of fleets, so you've got your corvettes and your destroyers together, but you can also have a corvette fleet on its own to stop piracy. One thing we haven't covered is trade routes. Trade routes are a little bit of a weird one, but they're always good to have. If you can work out how to use them, then get them up and going as best you can. I will cover them with the other side of things, with your traditions and stuff like that, so you have a better idea of them later. They're not massively important, but they do help you with your economy. If you've got things like these little icons here, then they are good to build space stations on with trade facilities. So that is it for our little hints and tips. It's just a quick run through and a bit of a refresher. It's a bit of a quick fire round just to get you back into the game. Don't forget, there are a lot of changes on the UI. There's a lot of things that you need to familiarise yourself with. But if you are struggling and you want a bit more detail, then the guide does cover most of them in detail, and obviously a better kind of run through of how to do things in a lot of detail if you are still struggling. But if you are returning, then hopefully this will help you to kind of give yourself a bit of an idea on what you need to do, and hopefully you'll get out there and you will conquer the galaxy. If you'd like to know anything else whatsoever in the early game, then please contact me in the comments below. Let me know what you want to know and I will get back to you. Otherwise, check out one of the videos for the other guides if you do need to. We are going to be moving on to the mid game and the end game on our next parts of the guide, because realistically we are almost at the end of the early game now. We've already started going to war, which is more mid game anyway, but we're going to start unlocking cruisers, which is pushing our fleet capacities, our fleet strengths and stuff like that. Everything's going to start coming down quite fast and we're going to start expanding quite a lot. We're going to be pushing on enemy territories. We've got fallen empires, we've got primitives who have become more self-aware and have taken over, so there's a lot of things to show. This map is perfect for that, and I also need to cover things like the L gates and the gateways and the dark matter stuff and the Hell's Maw. Yes, we do have Hell's Maw, excellent, so we can show you that as well. Black holes, etc, etc. You've also got things like the Leviathans, if you do have the Leviathan DLC. So there is a lot to cover at the later stage, but at the moment hopefully this will help you get yourself into a good game and at least to have a bit of a practice as well. Things will start coming towards mid and late game anyway, naturally, and you'll pick up things. If you're unsure as to what we mean by early, mid and late game, there is actual definitions to the mid and late game. You set it yourself and you see a massive change in mid game. End game or late game, there is a huge change in how things happen. An event will happen at some stage around the end game time, which will dramatically change your galaxy. There is a number of things that can happen. One of the worst ones that can happen is things like heaven and hell go to war, or you get the L gates activating and thousands of enemies appear. There's a lot of things to do, and there's a lot of things you can do to combat against it and get yourself set up ready for it. So that's what we're going to be covering. Hopefully I have answered any questions you may have had already. If not, please, as I say, hit the comment section below and let me know. If you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that thumbs up, and thank you everybody who has already commented on my previous videos and let me know how it's helped you. It is great to hear that it's been helping you, so hopefully I can continue to do that. Until next time, everybody, take care for now. Bye bye.